Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson. Today we're listening to An Unexpected Killer.
We were supposed to go out to eat. So she goes, let's do it after New Year's because we don't want to be outside with these clowns when they're acting up during New Year's. You can see this person go to Jamie's apartment and then is seen again exiting his sweatshirt with blood soaked.
It looked like a pretty brutal fight had taken place in that bedroom. How could this have happened? They didn't have any answers for me. We thought it was unlikely that it was a random act of violence.
We pull up Jamie's Facebook and see if she's friends with this guy. And she was. We wonder what his mindset is, what's he capable of.
New Year's Eve, 2016. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. 28-year-old Jamie Wounded is looking forward to an exciting new year. She's got a new home and big plans.
She had gotten her own apartment. She had gotten this job, and she loved it. She was proud of the fact that she did all of this stuff on her own. It kind of gave her that confidence, like, I can do this. Now I wonder how much more I can do.
Born on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota and a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe, Jamie is the youngest of 8 children.
When Jamie was born, there was a lot of us in the family always trying to hold Jamie, always trying to be with Jamie.
She was a complete mama's girl. She loved her mom.
That bond that Jamie and my mom had together was unbreakable.
Jamie has always been proud of her Native American heritage, and it is a central part of her identity.
Being Oglala Lakota was like everything for her. There was like a sense of freedom, and I saw that from her.
And there's another part of Jamie's identity that she's proud of. Though her assigned sex at birth was male, she has always identified as female.
Jamie started to know that she was transgender and never hid that from day one. Especially how she would dress, the makeup, the way she carried herself, and into the schools, none of that was hidden. My mom would help Jamie and they would get through things together. My mom was always there for Jamie.
In some Native American cultures, the term used to describe a transgender person is two-spirited.
It's pretty much used everywhere now as the Native American community. If you're LGBT, this is what you are. It's just something that we're born with. This is how we walk. We walk both worlds.
While Jamie was accepted by her own family, others on the reservation weren't as open-minded.
Jamie had a heavy weight on her due to being transgender. The negativity that was going around and what Jamie had to go against.
She used to tell us stories about how she was picked on. She really didn't seem like she could be herself.
In high school, the emotional toll drives Jamie to drug and alcohol abuse.
There were some struggles that Jamie had, and those are the things that I think Jamie used as a coping mechanism for that. But as time went on, Jamie started to find herself in a positive way.
When Jamie is 26, she decides to leave the reservation in search of a more supportive community and to start working on her sobriety. She moves to Sioux Falls and soon connects with a support group for the Indigenous LGBT community.
We were running the Sioux Falls Two-Spirit and Allies Society. So she walked over and she goes, "Are you guys Two-Spirit?" And we're like, "Yeah." And we just kind of sat and visited like we already knew each other. It seemed like she felt free. She could actually be herself. She got on the track of, actually I'm gonna sober up. And she went to treatment. She got better. She would contact me for support in her sobriety just because I knew her struggle and I was sober. It was more like a big sister, little sister thing of just watching out for each other.
Now in 2016, Jamie has hit the 2-year mark of sobriety and feels she is finally in control of her future. She lands her dream job as a telemarketer, where she gets to connect with people from all walks of life.
She had gotten this job that it was 5-star call center here. She loved it. And she actually sat and told me, she goes, "Sister, I feel like I'm good. I finally feel like I'm good now, in a good place."
On New Year's Eve 2016, Jamie opts for a quiet night at home after picking up some takeout.
Jamie and I spoke over the phone. We were supposed to go out to eat. So she goes, "All right, well, let's do it after New Year's because we don't want to be outside with these clowns when they're acting up during New Year's." And I said, "Okay, yeah, we'll do it."
At 8:30 p.m., she settles in for the evening.
Jamie had posted a meme of Marge Simpson laid out in the bed, obviously sleeping, and Jamie posted it in a joking kind of way, indicating that although she knew most of her friends would be out partying that night, she had no intention of doing so.
And Jamie's sending out some text messages to family and friends that said, "Happy New Year."
Her loved ones don't know it is the final time they will ever hear from her. As the new year begins, Jamie grows uncharacteristically quiet. No calls, no emails, no texts, no online posts.
When Jamie initially stopped communicating using her cell phone, her friends didn't reach out to law enforcement initially, perhaps out of a desire to give their friends some privacy.
On January 6th, Sioux Falls police respond to a call for a wellness check at an apartment near the city center.
The apartment manager called law enforcement after she had received some type of complaint from a tenant.
I was at home in bed, got a call. A young lady was walking down the hallway and she could smell something.
When patrol officers arrive, they knock on the door of the apartment that seems to be the source of the odor. The landlord provides them with the tenant's name, Jamie Wounded Arrow. There's no answer, so they force their way in.
Nothing seemed to be in disarray in either the living room or the kitchen, but that was a different story once you entered the bedroom. You immediately noticed blood all over the walls, on the ceilings.
There were smear marks. The bedding was all over the place and full of blood. The floor was full of blood.
It looked like a pretty brutal fight had taken place in that bedroom.
Given the condition of the scene, the patrol officers call in the homicide squad. Detectives quickly arrive and continue searching through the apartment.
The closet doors were the type that slide back and forth, and they had been broken off of the hinges.
In the closet was Jamie. On her back, she'd been secreted in that closet. Her shirt was pulled up, and I could see what appeared to me to be stab wounds to her chest. Jamie's body's obviously in a state of decomposition. What's going through my head is that we are way behind. Everyone talks about the first 48. We're way beyond that. We're way past 4 or 5 days. We have homicides that are pretty much cut and dry. But it was apparent to me that this would be a whodunit.
Investigators follow a dark trail of clues left by a killer.
The knife was found in the bedroom. There was blood on it.
Our coroner had no problem saying that he believed that that was the murder weapon. When you're looking at video and you see someone enter and when he exits he's blood-soaked, you start to key in on that.
And find themselves in a race against the clock.
Anytime you have, especially a homicide suspect who's on the run, who is also on the run from parole, you still wonder what his mindset is. Is this an isolated incident? What's he capable of?
Sioux Falls police have discovered the body of Jamie Wounded Arrow, stabbed to death in a closet in her apartment. They believe she has been dead for several days.
The body is speaking to you, and it's saying a lot. I had some questions in regards to how Jamie's shirt was when she was stabbed. We pulled her shirt back down and we could match the stab wounds on her chest to the rips in the fabric. So that helps to tell the story that her shirt was down when she was attacked. I believe he just attempted to secret her in the closet. When he pulls her by the shirt to get her in the closet, the shirt comes up around her neck.
As they wait for the coroner to arrive, detectives turn to the rest of Jamie's apartment, searching for any clues.
So in this crime scene, you're looking for things that are there and more importantly, things that aren't there. Her phone isn't there. There's no purse there. It's apparent that somebody has left with these things.
Although these items are missing, detectives don't see any signs of a break-in. As they continue to scour her apartment, they discover what they believe could be the murder weapon.
The knife was found in the bedroom. There was blood on it. Jamie's body sustained 7 stab wounds, all of which were consistent with a 3.5 to 4 inch blade of a kitchen knife.
That knife was bagged, sent into the lab for forensic testing. Our coroner had no problem saying that he believed that that was the murder weapon.
With a killer on the loose, investigators know they must move quickly.
Jamie's phone was missing. Obviously, that becomes a major focus with some of the investigators that I've tasked to find her phone. So there were subpoenas being written, search warrants, everything we can do possible to find the phone. The other huge thing in today's day and age is video.
Jamie's apartment complex had surveillance cameras stationed at various locations on the property, near the entrances and exits to the buildings themselves.
You're literally praying that these cameras are functional. So there's phone calls being made to management to have them save and preserve all that videotape.
While they wait to get the video, detectives are faced with the difficult task of contacting Jamie's family.
When I had gotten that call, I just asked why. Why has this happened? And how could this have happened? They didn't have any answers for me. Then I let my mom know. And that was hard to relay that information to her because she had dementia. It brought tears to our eyes because it was devastating. It was unreal. It was heartbreaking.
When I got the news, it was a big shock, a huge shock for us. How did this happen?
News of the murder of a Native American transgender woman brutally stabbed in her own home quickly spreads.
It's unusual. It is still headline news when a murder happens in Sioux Falls. So the fact that it happened on New Year's Eve to a member of the trans community was a really big deal. They wanted to make sure a killer was brought to justice.
In search of answers, detectives begin questioning Jamie's neighbors.
It was a huge apartment complex. I'd say probably 1,000 people living there.
It seemed to be a place where people kept to themselves, people minded their own business, and so it wouldn't be unusual for a tenant to not be seen by his or her neighbors for a number of days.
But you can't discount someone in the building having knowledge and potentially being involved. So we talked to all of them just to find if they were witnesses, and the cameras ended up revealing really nothing. Nobody heard anything.
Detectives also look for clues in Jamie's cell phone records and activity on social media. It ends with her post at 11:08 p.m. on New Year's Eve.
There was nothing there. This is the last communication she has. There is no usage of her phone, no private messages or DMs.
Meanwhile, investigators get the answer they are hoping for regarding the apartment complex's security cameras. They were working, and the video is available.
The detectives immediately retrieve the video, and they would start to pick it apart.
It's a situation where you're waiting with bated breath to see, is our perpetrator going to show himself to us?
Sioux Falls detectives are pouring through security footage from Jamie Wounded Arrow's apartment complex frame by frame, hoping to find clues about what happened in her final moments.
You have to watch every second of it because you don't know what's going to be missed.
The video shows Jamie arriving home at 8:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. The investigators don't see anything unusual in the footage after that, until several hours later.
We had surveillance footage that showed a person arriving to her apartment complex at around 3:30 in the morning.
About 2 minutes after that, you see him walk back and out the apartment complex. About a minute or two later, he reappears and comes back to the entry of the apartment complex, walks down the stairs to what is Jamie's apartment, and then is seen again an hour and 10 minutes later exiting the apartment complex.
Investigators believe they are looking at Jamie's killer. He is the only person seen on surveillance during the window of time in which Jamie was murdered.
It was like hitting a jackpot. You can't believe how lucky you are, how lucky that the cameras were recording, that the footage was still there, that it captured our suspect.
But the video doesn't give the investigators a clear look at the man's face. Still, What they see leads them to believe this is possibly someone who Jamie knows.
The suspect knocked on the door for a significant amount of time, received no response. He walked out, walked around the apartment complex, banged on her window, woke her up. He came back in, and she let him into the house. It's highly unlikely that he's a stranger.
When he arrived to Jamie's apartment, he was wearing basketball shorts, sneakers, and a sweatshirt. His appearance changed when he came out of Jamie's apartment sometime after 4:40 in the morning.
What they see next convinces detectives they are indeed looking at Jamie's killer.
And you could read that this was a sweatshirt that said Peabody Energy on it. And it appeared to me that the sweatshirt was bloody. I'd go so far as to say blood-soaked. But when you're looking at video and you see someone enter and when he exits he's blood-soaked, you start to key in on that.
Then we see him walk over to a hill with kind of a grove of trees, and he starts throwing things into this little ravine, and then he disappears from view.
Officers rush to the ravine behind the apartment complex and begin searching the area.
We found Jamie's clutch purse with Jamie's ID and Social Security card in it, and a debit card. There was no money in it. We don't know if he had taken money out of it, but he certainly had not taken the debit card out of it.
As they investigate, detectives also ponder potential motives for the vicious attack.
In my mind, there was some motive besides robbery. We thought it was unlikely that it was a random act of violence, given that we had seen the perpetrator's behavior on the surveillance footage, and he appeared to know his victim. Investigators wondered whether Jamie's status as a trans female was a motive here. It certainly could have been, so we had to look at it as if it was potentially a hate crime.
I remember on the news they kept saying she is now the second or third transgender woman in the United States to be killed on New Year's. It was a shock.
Searching for any evidence to support that possibility or point to a different motive for this murder, detectives begin a deep dive into Jamie's background. They quickly uncover some troubling information about her past.
She battled addiction. She had had some run-ins with the criminal justice system. So she had a lot of struggles. She was battling through them and doing the best that she could.
The investigators learned that Jamie's struggles included a conviction for drug possession. As a result, the court had ordered her into a treatment program.
She had been to the Arch, which is a halfway house in Sioux Falls. A halfway house means you're coming out of incarceration and they're trying to blend you back into society. There's AA meetings. There's any number of things that are geared to get a person who's in that system back out into society. But I knew from our investigation that while she was at the Arch, she came into contact with many felons.
We know that sometimes people who are in treatment use the connections they make at those facilities for good, as we believe Jamie did. We also know people often use those connections for bad. There were a number of red flags raised.
Homicide detectives wonder if someone Jamie Wounded Arrow met during her stay at a halfway house might have been involved in her murder. Looking for any connection, they examined the data from Jamie's missing cell phone. and they find something unexpected.
We learned that 2 calls had been placed after the time the likely perpetrator had left Jamie's apartment. She had already been killed. So we knew it wasn't her using the phone. It had to be the killer. Law enforcement was able to determine that the first call was a misdial.
They could see through the records. We got a hold of this gentleman who had nothing to do with the case.
After the wrong number, the records show the second call from Jamie's phone came at around 5 a.m. on New Year's Day to a woman named Brianna White Butterfly.
She told investigators the call had been placed to her from her boyfriend. She identified him by name, Joshua LeClaire. She indicated to law enforcement that she had been with him earlier in the night on New Year's Eve, and that he'd left at some point that night.
They had argued, he was drunk, and he had left the house, and he did not have a phone. And she was wondering whose phone he was using to call her in the early morning hours.
We learned Joshua LeClaire is a Native American man who was raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation and in Rapid City, South Dakota. He also had a conviction for first-degree burglary from 2011. He was sent to prison for that. He was released on parole in 2016, but absconded, meaning he disappeared, ceased communications with his parole officer, and had a warrant out for his arrest at the time Jamie died.
Joshua LeClaire is now the prime suspect in Jamie's murder. And as detectives dig further into his past, they find a clear connection between him and Jamie.
Joshua and Jamie knew each other. We know they had contact together at the Arch in Sioux Falls when both of them were going through treatment.
There's obviously a connection there. So we pull up Jamie's Facebook and see if she's friends with this guy. And she was.
We know that they had some communications, though we're not sure of the extent of their relationship and what it all entailed.
Investigators hope Jamie's family can fill in some blanks about the relationship.
It started out as far as Jamie helping with money, with $20 here and $20 here, and I don't know if there was a relationship there or what, but it had started because he was there also at the Arch.
While Joshua LeClaire does seem to resemble the man in the security video, the footage is grainy, and detectives have no physical evidence linking him to the murder, or a motive for him to have killed someone who appears to be a friend.
There was no evidence to show that Josh held any ill will towards her. None of this makes sense.
The investigators are ready to confront Joshua to see if he can clear things up.
We immediately put out what we call a bolo, or be on the lookout, for Josh.
As they search for him, detectives also track down his friends and press them for leads on his whereabouts.
Law enforcement started with Joshua's immediate circle, his girlfriend, friends who knew him, perhaps friends who had spent time with him in the days leading up to Jamie's murder. That led them to one of Joshua's friends who had spent time with him on New Year's Eve.
The friend, Roscoe Poorbear, has an unexpected and stunning story to tell.
Roscoe Poorbear told law enforcement he had in fact been with Joshua in the early morning hours of New Year's Day. Roscoe noticed that Joshua was wearing a bloody sweatshirt and saw Joshua throw the sweatshirt into a dumpster at a construction site. They were able to go to the construction site and they found the sweatshirt just where Roscoe said it would be.
The bloody sweatshirt appears to be the same one worn by the man in the surveillance video from Jamie's apartment complex.
To be able to see the logo of that sweatshirt on the camera, to find that sweatshirt in a dumpster when a witness had said, this is where Joshua Clare threw this sweatshirt. That was a very important part of the case, to see that.
As they send the sweatshirt to the forensics lab for testing, police also send the search for Joshua LeClaire into high gear.
At this point, efforts to locate Joshua are ramping up significantly, with statewide law enforcement to check all corners of the state for locations Joshua may possibly be. The concern was, has he fled?
Anytime you have, especially a homicide suspect who's on the run, who is also on the run from parole, you still wonder what his mindset is. Is this an isolated incident? What's he capable of?
A search is underway in South Dakota for Joshua LeClaire, the prime suspect in the murder of Jamie Wounded Arrow. He's been on the run for 2 days, and investigators have no leads to where he could be hiding. Until Sioux Falls police respond to a routine call for help.
Local law enforcement were called to a report of an intoxicated person. They thought this was a call of a drunken, disorderly person who needed to go to detox. Police show up, and initially they don't know who they're speaking to because the man gives them a false name.
He lied about who he was. Patrol officers didn't know going in that they were dealing with Joshua Clare.
But once the officers arrest him for creating a public disturbance, they discover his true identity. Homicide detectives rush to the station to interrogate him about Jamie's murder.
When Detective Bakke got Joshua into the interview room, he was intoxicated, and Detective Bakke knew that he had to buy himself some time. He offered Joshua coffee, offered him cigarettes, in an effort to help him sober up.
As soon as the detective sits down with his suspect, something catches his eye.
Joshua had a significant laceration on his palm.
We knew, based on the nature of Jamie's wounds, that the kitchen knife was the murder weapon. And Joshua LeClaire's injury was consistent with using a knife to stab another person. Detective Bakke smartly didn't mention it for a number of hours. It was there, he saw it, and he waited for the right opportunity to talk to Joshua about it.
You come and confront him, there's going to be an immediate denial. It's human nature. And it's getting by that denial. It's working around that denial and getting to the truth. That's what takes time. He didn't ever deny knowing Jamie. He didn't deny going to her apartment. He simply used the excuse that he was blackout drunk and could only remember bits and pieces of why he was there and what had happened during the interaction.
But Detective Bakke continues to press him harder and harder.
We started to broach the fact that he was in the apartment and there was a fight.
Joshua said that he and Jamie had argued over a pair of shoes, but Joshua's excuse didn't make sense. The brutality of her murder was not consistent with an argument over shoes.
As I began to press a bit, Josh eventually did say that he got the cut on his hand from stabbing Jamie.
This was a confession. This meant, on top of all of the other evidence we had to that point, we had an admission he is the killer.
The evidence in this case, it was stacked.
We had surveillance footage showing Joshua LeClaire had been to Jamie's apartment. We saw him on video throwing items of Jamie's into the ravine. We knew he had an injury to his hand, which could only have been caused by stabbing someone repeatedly and the knife sliding up his palm. We knew from Roscoe Forbear that Joshua had the same sweatshirt we saw him wearing at Jamie's apartment, only when Roscoe saw it, it was bloody.
And when the lab results come in, they show the blood on the sweatshirt matches both Joshua LeClaire and Jamie Wounded Arrow.
All of that, along with Joshua's confession, left no doubt in anyone's mind that he was the killer. We don't know if Joshua panicked after he killed Jamie. He did some things which seemed counterintuitive. He left the knife, he took her IDs, but left his blood.
To a casual observer, someone who watches crime show TVs, they would question, why would the suspect do that? Well, the biggest factor, in my opinion, is that this person's never killed before. It doesn't make sense because it can't make sense.
What we do know is that he did enough in his mind to try to avoid getting caught.
On January 8th, 2017, Sioux Falls police charged Joshua LeClaire with first-degree murder for the stabbing death of Jamie Wounded Arrow. But even after a long interrogation, investigators still don't know his motive or what happened to Jamie in her final moments.
In regards to the transgender portion of this case and potential hate crime, it simply wasn't there.
In my opinion, the brutality of the crime certainly indicated that Joshua knew Jamie and that he was motivated by some sense of hatred, even if not necessarily based on her status as a trans woman. We don't know if he made advances toward her that were rejected or a drunken fight of some sort, an argument. Just the viciousness of the attack signaled to me that there was something deeper beyond just a casual acquaintanceship.
Faced with the overwhelming evidence against him, Joshua LeClaire pleads guilty. But before the court can hold a sentencing hearing, the confessed killer drops a bombshell.
At his pre-sentencing interview, Joshua LeClaire gave information that changed everything.
Joshua LeClaire has pleaded guilty to stabbing Jamie Wounded Arrow to death in her Sioux Falls apartment. He's never said why he did it, but before he can be sentenced, he makes a stunning claim.
He told the investigator that there had been a sexual advance made towards him and Jamie had grabbed a knife and he had defended himself.
At first, he said there was an argument over shoes. It wasn't until his sentencing was looming that he said Jamie had made a sexual advance toward him, that he felt threatened by it, and he stabbed her in self-defense. It was offensive, frankly, to have Joshua try to shame Jamie in this way. There were no indications that she had made any advances toward him.
I don't believe it to be true in any way, shape, or form. I believe that's a person who's at the end of the road and is about to be sentenced is going to say anything.
The only person here who had defensive wounds to her hands and her forearms was Jamie, whereas Joshua had none of that. The only wound Joshua had was the injury to his palm, which was as a direct result of stabbing Jamie so many times. At this point, we felt Joshua LeClaire was kind of like an animal backed into a corner. It's not unusual for defendants to shame the victim before sentencing. at the same time, we had to wonder whether the sentencing judge would consider it as true.
The answer comes on June 26, 2018, when Joshua LeClaire appears in court for his sentencing hearing.
Joshua asked for a lenient sentence, but he spoke about Jamie in the abstract as if he didn't know her. He said something to the effect of, "No one deserves to be killed this way." When he was the one who did it, it showed a remarkable sense of selfishness and a lack of true remorse.
I just remember being there, and I remember seeing him. And I just kind of looked over like this, and I remember it was real.
When it's somebody that you love, it's anger, it's sadness, it's a lot of emotions. And in my statement there, I did mention that he should rot in prison too.
The judge rejects the claim of self-defense and sentences 27-year-old Joshua LeClaire to 65 years in prison,
making him an old man by the time he gets out. It is, for all intents and purposes, a life sentence for him.
This individual that took our sister's life, our baby sister's life, he got, what was given to him. So that was a tough thing to do, to be sitting in front of that Mal who did that. I think I have cried for, I felt like forever.
For Jamie's loved ones, the outcome is bittersweet.
They were overjoyed that justice had been done, in spite of what had been done to Jamie. But there was a sense of dissatisfaction in that Joshua never really told the whole story. And we'll probably never know the real reason he was there and what happened between them.
I really miss seeing how happy she was when she started accomplishing some of her goals. Sense of happiness. Yes, I did it.
There's a lot of worse. With Jamie's life being cut short and my mom having dementia, it wasn't just that one time that I had to break the story to her. It was every time that I went to go visit her, I would have to tell her each time that it was Jamie that was gone. And each time that brought tears to her eyes. And we had to relive it. People who go through this have to have strength within yourself to continue on, to live your life also, to live for them.